Hello everyone. The iPad 10 generation is one of those iPads that came out a couple of years ago, and we might actually be seeing the successor of this thing sooner rather than later. So I wanted to go and take a look at the iPad 10 generation and see how the idea of buying an iPad 10 in 2025, seeing if it's still worth it, seeing if there's some better alternatives, or maybe you should wait for the next successor. So we'll go and kind of talk about that throughout this whole entire video. First things first though, if you do want to go through and if you want to pick up an iPad that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPad 10 generation, this particular device on the front side is basically going through and giving you a 10.9-inch liquid retina display. Now, you have to remember, number one, that's still not a terrible display to have inside of this type of device. This thing did basically come out in 2022, so it really wasn't even that long ago, but still not like a terrible device, not a terrible panel. And I do think if you are going to go through and pick up an iPad, you kind of know what you're getting if you're going to go through and buy an iPad like this. So kind of keep that in mind. If you are going to go through and pick up a device, this is essentially what to expect when you're going through and buying one of these types of panels. Now, it's not a bad panel, but you are getting quite a bit of, bezel around it. That's just kind of what's going to end up happening, but it's not terrible by any means. You have a USB Type-C port at the bottom and flat sides. You might think that would probably give you Apple Pencil 2 support, but that is not right. This thing is only giving you Apple Pencil 1 support and the USB Type-C Apple Pencil if you want to go for that one. So you do have some type of capability when it comes down to it here and there, but even then, the thing I would definitely tell you is that if you are going to go through and pick up a device, getting Apple Pencil 2 is a really nice thing to have. On the back side, you're getting this aluminum back. You're getting a single camera setup in the top left as well. And overall, when you're going through and if you're feeling this type of iPad and you're kind of looking around it, it still looks like a pretty decent iPad, right? It still looks good. I don't think this thing is like a terrible iPad. I don't think it's like an ugly iPad. I think it still holds up fairly well when it comes down to that side. But there might be better iPads to go and buy in some cases, and we'll talk about that throughout this whole entire video. But number one, at least from the exterior on my particular example, looking at this type of device, I think Apple did a decent job. They did what they could, and it's not a terrible iPad. But you have to remember that when we're comparing this iPad against the iPad Pros or against a lot of the competition, nowadays, a lot of the other iPads and tablets are giving you brighter panels or they're giving you higher refresh rate panels. So that is one of those things to kind of keep in mind here. If you do want an iPad that is going to be giving you a little bit of better capability there, it might be kind of nice to go through and be able to buy an iPad that is going to be giving you a little bit of a brighter display, or it's going to be giving you a higher refresh panel. So that is in and of itself, again, one of those things to keep in mind here. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but that could be one thing you might experience here if you are going to go through and pick up this type of iPad. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to its price tag, this iPad is still being sold in the brand new market, but you are able to buy this thing in the used market for a little bit cheaper. So if you did want to go through and buy this type of iPad, they are available on Amazon and you can get them for significant discounts from there. So if you did want to go and buy the type of iPad like this, like I said before, links are down in the description so you can get them from there. And they're going to be cheaper there than buying the brand new from the Apple Store. But even the brand new Apple Store price is still actually quite competitive as well. So I think there's a lot to love about an iPad 10, especially when it comes down to its whole entire build quality, what you're kind of getting for the price tag. And I do think it's not like a terrible priced iPad for the type of capability that you're getting here. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is its chipset and its performance level. So this type of device is basically giving you an Apple A14 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So the thing you're going to have to remember about the RAM, about the performance, about everything like that, is that this type of capability, it's still a very good type of performing device. And we'll get into the levels of that in a second. But even from the camera side, 12 megapixel wide and a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, you're able to do 4K at 60 on the back and you're able to do 1080p at 60 on the front. And as I mentioned before, that's not terrible types of resolutions to film in. 4K at 60 on the back is still basically what the iPhone 16 can do. And 1080p at 60 on the front, it's not terrible either. But you have to remember with something like the iPad, 10th generation, this type of iPad has the potential of basically giving you center stage and some cool capability like that, but you are kind of maxed out when it comes down to the capability of long term, how this camera compares even against an iPhone 14. Those types of phones are giving you 4K at 60 on the front. Even basic phones nowadays are giving you multiple camera sensors. So the fact that this thing is missing out on that type of kind of stuff, it is kind of lackluster in some ways as well. So it would be really nice to be able to go through and get a device that is going to be giving you better capability there, this device unfortunately is not going to be giving you the best type of camera, but it is going to be giving you a decent camera if you wanted a quick phone to give you like better camera photos, or like if your phone's not working or if your phone's far away, this thing will still work in a pinch, especially if you need something like take photos during class or something like that, then this thing might be a decent idea from that side as well. From that side too, that kind of covers it up there. In terms of software longevity, this type of device is also one of those types of devices that's going to hold up decently well when it comes down to its, software longevity. Like this thing is still going to be supported with software for several more years. How long, I'm not really too sure, but iPads tend to like outlast their iPhone counterparts, and the iPhone 12, which this phone and that phone have the same chipset, though that phone is still supported. So I would imagine this thing is still going to be here for a couple of more years as well. Like I said before, I'm not really too sure at what level this thing is going to be unsupported, but I would say at least another like 2 years, maybe 3 years, this phone is still going to be supported. So I think that is in and of itself kind of a nice thing going on here too. The fact that you can go through, buy a phone like this at that level, and it still is going to be giving you a pretty decent type of experience when it comes down to that side as well. When it comes down to its battery life, this thing is still giving you a 7,606 mAh battery, which as I mentioned before, and that in and of itself is actually a pretty decent level of performance to have inside of its battery life as well. It's a pretty good sized battery. I think if you are going to go through and pick up a device, this thing does hold up fairly well when it comes down to that battery size as well. And finally, to wrap around with the performance, once again, this device is going to be giving you that Apple A14 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So the things you're going to have to remember with this type of device when it comes down to it is that it is a decent performing type of device when it comes down to its chipset. Again, this thing is not going to be the fastest performing phone of all time or fastest performing iPad, but I do think, like I said before, if you're in a pinch and you need to go and buy an iPad, this thing will give you a pretty decent experience, right? It's not perfect, but I do think this thing, for the most part, if you're going to go through and pick up a device, it does a decent job at the performance levels you're going to throw at it, but you're going to have to remember this thing will perform just like an iPhone 12. So if you can think to your head that an iPhone 12 is going to handle the performance that you're going to throw at it, then this thing is probably going to be good too. But if you're thinking to yourself already that an iPhone 12 is not going to be that fast, maybe you have an iPhone 13 and it's not really that fast anyways, then this thing isn't really going to be giving you that great of an experience anyways. And you might have to look at something like an iPad Pro, from that particular side as well. So overall, the thing I can definitely tell you is that an iPhone and iPad 10th generation, it still is worth buying. And I do think if you are going to go through and pick up a device, this thing does make a lot of sense to go and pick up. Would it be the first device I'd recommend buying? Probably not. There might be better devices to go and buy, but there are some really good devices to go and pick up. And I think this one would make a lot of sense to buy in the used market. But if you want to spend a little bit more money, then maybe you can buy like a last generation iPad Pro, maybe an iPad Air. I think an M1 iPad Air is still a really good deal, and I'd probably recommend buying that one over this one. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there too. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.